it's Wes. And today, I said I didn't want to make a habit of this, but here we are again. It's another lens filter review. Full disclosure, I want to make sure any of my biases might be known. Number one, Freewell did provide these to me free of charge, for my honest opinion, but that's not what's going to bias me. Number two, oh boy do I love magnets. And these have got those in spades. So Freewell has come up with something that honestly the photography community has needed for years. A new and better way of attaching ND filters, any sort of filters, to cameras. And it's with magnets. I have no idea how they got magnets as strong as these are inside these little tiny filters. You'll expect them to be gigantic and really blow up the size of these filters and make them kind of cumbersome, hard to use, but honestly, they are not much bigger than normal filters. They work great, mechanically speaking. So, the components of this system are, you have a back UV filter. Included in the box, however, if you don't like to use a UV filter, is just a plain old ring with no glass in the middle. Originally, when they came out with this system, the UV filter was baked in and that was the only option, but they listened to what customers wanted and they made that optional. And they include them both in the box. That's great. You screw this piece onto the front of your lens and then you just kind of leave it there. And then you can just snap whatever you want on top of that. One of my favorite parts of this system is that it works with your existing lens caps. So this goes on. Now it's not all the way, but it's pretty solid. If you don't like that and you want something even simpler, they do have their own magnetically attaching lens caps. Now these stay on pretty well. I believe that it would be possible to knock it off. I did a few tests on my waist and it didn't fall off, but I think that it could. While this will very easily fit inside your lens hood, that's great. Once it's in there, you're gonna have a hard time getting their lens cap off. So if that's what you're gonna do, you're probably gonna wanna use the stock lens cap, which is fine. On this one, I just have the ring. On this one, I have the actual UV filter from Freewell. We can just snap an ND filter on there. So what I have to look at today is a 5 and a 6 stop ND filter. And it should also be noted that the boxes that they come in are also magnetically closed. Completely unnecessary, but I like the consistency and attention to detail. But none of that matters unless the image quality is great. And is it? Is the image quality any good? Well, I went back to my old flare test, like I did my last ND filter review, got an even brighter flashlight. It is exceedingly bright, let me tell you. Little flare test here. So I'm just skipping right to the hard part. I found the last time that it was my 16-35 at 5.6 that flared the hardest, or rather, that gave these filters the hardest time, so we just did that. So we did that at 35 millimeters and at 16 millimeters, and I pitted this against no filter at all, and also against the K&F's circular polarizer, which I found to be surprisingly good at rejecting flare. Once we put their UV filter up against all this, we find that honestly there's not a lot of issues here. I can see just a slight bit of increase. Of course, you have that reflectance between the filter and the lens. That dreaded green blob does show its head, but it's not too bad. It is, however, there. Personally, I'm not a big fan of UV filters. I would just use the dummy ring. Works fine for me. Let's move on to the main event, the actual ND filters. So I'm pitting this one against my Hoya variable ND, my top performer, which was the K&F variable plus CPL filter. And as you can see, it stacks up pretty well. It is very close to the competition. Yes, I probably should have pitted this against a non-variable ND, because it kind of gives it an advantage at this stage since it only has one layer to deal with. But again, I'm reasonably impressed with the flare resistance of this. You are introducing that extra layer of reflection in front of the lens and you will get a little bit more flare, a little bit more blobbing, but it's not too bad. It's still up there with the big boys. It's pretty interesting to see how these smaller companies are coming up and producing really top quality filters. And one thing that really got me, I noticed that the color cast on this was really good. And so I locked my camera down in white balance instead of using auto white balance just to see. Honestly, of all of them, it is closer to the actual white balance of the camera. Now again, it has an advantage because it's not a variable ND. So let's keep on moving and go with a sharpness test. Let's see if these are robbing us of our sharpness. Say you're doing a landscape photo, you want all that detail. I'm mounted on my A7 III, which is my sharpest camera. It has a pretty weak AA filter for a 24 megapixel camera. And I went back to the old guy painting. It's actually called The World in His Eyes, but people call it the old dude. Again, I stacked this up against the no filter camera. And honestly, there is not a huge difference in sharpness. Maybe if you had, say, an A7R III, A7R4, like a high megapixel camera, you'll see a little difference, but at 24 megapixels, I'm seeing marginal at best degradation. If you want to see higher resolution samples of all of these images, head on down, there's a link in the description to my website, you can blow that up, and there are some samples at 100 and 200% crop. Next up, what I thought would be interesting was to take both of these filters, because you can do this. Bada bing, bada boom. I now have a 6-stop and a 5-stop filter on my lens. That was easy, but I don't recommend doing this. I don't know what happened, but this really affected the sharpness. It's very interesting. So I couldn't see much perceptual difference in sharpness with just one of these on, but with two on, it's pretty soft. So yeah, don't do that. But in a pinch, if you really need to cut down the light and you don't have what you need to do it, you can stack them. Easy peasy. Speaking of stacking, one thing that I really appreciate about lens filter systems is packaging. I talked about this at more length than I probably should have in my K&F filter video. This one, if I have the screw-in base, plus the ND filter, plus the lens cap, it still fits perfectly in the case. I don't know why this is so hard to do. Other manufacturers, if I were to put the adapter ring on the back of it and stick it in the case, it gets more difficult. I can fit my Hoya ND and the adapter in its case. I love that. But once I get to the K&F concept filters, things get a little tighter in here. So this one, there's really only room for the filter itself, and then that's fine. I mean, they're designing around their own tolerances, so I can understand that, but having the ability to fit everything that you need in one case is really handy to me. There you have it. Now, honestly, I don't use non-variable ND filters all that much. If they had a variable ND filter, say a 2 to 5 stop, I would be all over that. Oh, they do. Well, okay then. Well, that just got expensive. But for me, as a run and gun wedding photographer, often hybrid shooter, the ability to put the filters on and off as quickly as possible and not literally screw around with them, that is huge for me. I didn't really realize how much it annoyed me until I got my hands on these. That is so much easier. Let me know what you think about these Freewell filters. Take a look at the image samples, let me know if I'm wrong, let me know if you think that they are good enough, sharp enough. Check out the image cast, because those image samples, at the link in the description, they are at fixed white balance, so what you're seeing from the no filter to the filter on is actually showing you the color cast. Let me know if you've tried them, and let me know if there's something new and innovative that I should be looking at, because I love finding the new things. That's what I'm here for. Love technology, love shiny things, and I love magnets. So, until next time, go take some photos.